All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Now, I had uploaded a video about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I decided to redo the video, and this will be commentary about the Hall of Fame nominees. And again, I come to this with my own bias, and I will admit that. Um, there are certain artists on here where I'm just scratching my head, but every single year we are treated to at least, I would say, 3 or 4 nominees that don't make sense. And oftentimes these people do get inducted into the Hall of Fame. As a woman said to Justin Hayward, so when are you being induced? And some of these people might be thinking they need to be induced. Now, the list is pretty interesting. The Hall of Fame likes to focus on diversity. This is what they like to do. Much like the general public, instead of focusing on merit, longevity, they tend to focus on selecting a group of nominees that are from a wide range of areas within the music industry. I'm going to go through the list one by one. It might get boring. It might get tedious. I'll try to spice it up with some crazy commentary. I don't know how I'm going to make this interesting, but you have to just keep watching. So the first on the list here, and this is alphabetical order, is Beck. I had to reacquaint myself with Beck from the 90s. Now, anything that comes out of the 90s, I have a hard bias against. I'm just telling you this. And again, Beck hasn't been around as long as, say, I don't know, Al Stewart, Jim Croce, all right? People who I believe should be in the Hall of Fame who are not even getting nominated for the Hall of Fame, all right? Do I think Beck should be in the Hall of Fame? No, I do not. Pat Benatar, second time being nominated, way overdue, should have been in. They want more women into the Hall of Fame. I'm just not sure why she didn't go in. I think Stevie Nicks went in that year, and Pat Benatar has a much better catalog than Stevie Nicks. She's a much better vocalist than Stevie Nicks. I mean, seriously, she is. And then her husband, Neil Giraldo, should also be going into the Hall of Fame as well. I'm not sure how they're going to do this. If she does get in, will her husband be in as well? And maybe even members of that band from the early 80s should probably get in. Very groundbreaking, but it's just Pat Benatar. So we'll see how that goes. Kate Bush. Now, do I like Kate Bush? Yes, I do. Very interesting, eclectic, beautiful, ethereal singing voice, very talented. She was hanging out with Peter Gabriel for a while during the 80s. Do I think she should be put into the Hall of Fame? No. Her body of work just isn't strong enough, in my opinion, to put her in. But again, she is a woman, and she is performing music that is rock-based. So I will say that if she does get in, I won't really be that frustrated about it. I won't really care that much, other than I think there are a whole bunch of people that need to get in before Kate Bush. Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh, who's even said recently that he's flattered with the nomination, but he'd be voting for other people to go in there. He said something like, someone there must really like us. Okay, now this is an interesting comment because it shows the bias of the Hall of Fame. Now, should Devo be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I would say no. They are interesting. They're innovative. I mean, these were guys who wore plant pots on their head, right? They were the epitome of, the post-punk new wave era. Their videos were interesting. As musicians, I think they're pretty good too. They're pretty decent musicians. However, I just don't see it. I just don't see that they have a body of work that would suggest they get into the Hall of Fame. Duran Duran. Now, I would say yes to Duran Duran. I think they were very influential. I think they do have a body of work to get them in. I think they were liked by both the critics and mainstream folks. It's just a good band. I think everybody in that band was decent. I don't know. Maybe they don't have the body of work to get in. That would maybe be their own. It's like really close. It's, do they have enough or don't they? And I would say they probably do. And they were super influential in the 1980s. And again, if you're using the whole video music channel influencer portion of this, I would say Duran Duran probably gets in based on that. Next is Eminem. Yeah. If I can just take a hard pass on Eminem and say, just no, this should not even be on the list, but it is on the list. I just don't think this should be on this list. So I'm going to skip over Eminem and go to the Eurythmics. All right. And Annie Lennox, Dave Stewart, brilliant. Even more so, if you're going to choose between Duran Duran and the Eurythmics, believe it or not, I would go with the Eurythmics. Influence, the angelic, and oftentimes just quirky, good voice of Annie Lennox, her persona, which I think just inspired, if they want to inspire a whole bunch of women to get involved in music, she had that sort of underground class. And Dave Stewart, a lot of people forget about how great Dave Stewart is as a producer, writer, arranger. Produced the song Don't Come Around Here No More for Tom Petty, and that was a completely weird but awesome song. And Dave Stewart, Annie Lennox, yes, absolutely should be in. And again, you can check the box off where you get more women into the Hall of Fame, because people are going to look at Annie Lennox and see her as the Eurythmics. So good choice, I think, to be in. Judas Priest. For some reason, they're hyper-focused now just on Judas Priest. Do I think they should get in? Yes, but that opens up a floodgate of why aren't so many other metal bands, hard rock metal bands in. They're hyper-focused on Judas Priest. I think it's a bit political. I think Rob Halford and some of the choices that he has made over his life have influenced that. It's kind of a story that they want to tell. And so Judas Priest is up for a nomination. Do I like their music? Yeah, for a good portion of their existence. The stuff really that hits home is the late 70s material for me. That's when they were more of this bluesy hard rock band that was just, you know, basically had no boundaries to what they were doing at that point. And then the 80s came along and they honed that sound a little bit. People will probably most recognize the song You Got Another Thing Coming, which is just a great anthem. The rest of their material to me, and I've listened to a lot of it, doesn't get to the level that they were back in the late 70s with like Living After Midnight and stuff like that. They were just a unique, super powerhouse hard rock band. So if you're going to put them in, I think that's good, because it might open up the floodgates to start looking at other hard rock and heavy metal bands. All right, next on the list, Fela Kuti, really a world music artist, somebody who's, again, pushed the boundaries of all kinds of music. I remember listening to Fela Kuti back in the 80s, college radio. We played a lot of that music, and that fit our format really well. It's jazz, it's funk, it's rock, it's world rhythms, world beats, African beats, all this stuff kind of rolled into one. Um, I don't know. I'm just gonna put a question mark. I would say important music for sure. Super talented musician, yes. Um, I don't know. There are a lot of things out there that might also fit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You're going to find that a lot of people don't know who Fela Kuti is. So I don't know if that matters. Again, it's more of an sort of under or off the grid type pick. Next is MC5. They are so hell bent on getting MC5 into the Hall of Fame. In fact, MC5 and the next one on the list, they are just enamored with this band. And as I've told people, I've tried to listen to MC5, I've tried to like MC5, and I can't do it. There are moments where I understand why they've been nominated. Certainly, they influenced probably every punk and garage band on the planet, but I'd have to say that the bands that came later were far superior to the band that influenced them. That's the way I would look at this. But the fact that they were there and they were doing music that really was giving it and sticking it to the man, right? MC5. I mean, we could use that spirit in rock and roll again, even if it's misplaced a little bit. So I'll give them credit for that. But I'm not a fan, and I don't think they should go in. There are so many other bands that should go in ahead of them. Now, again, the Hall of Fame committee, for some reason, has a thing for them. And the next band they do as well, the New York Dolls. I'm a fan of David Johansen. I really liked his alter ego character, Buster Poindexter. It was far more interesting to me, and accessible music, party music, as opposed to the dreary and dark punk of the New York Dolls. They're going to say, here's another band that influenced. But the problem is that influence, I think, kind of stopped at a certain point. Nobody is putting out music like this anymore. Nobody is citing the New York Dolls. Maybe they are. I don't know. If they are, it's not really resonating all that much. We've splintered so much anyway when it comes to music that this list kind of is countercultural because it's so diverse. And I have to give them credit in that regard, but they're doing this because they don't want to put in like all mainstream artists. They want to put in people who are a little bit on the fringe and represent, different cultural norms and so forth. And, MC5 and the New York Dolls, that's what they do. Next on the list is kind of a strange one. Dolly Parton is on this list. Dolly Parton, as a musical figure, has influenced like 7 decades of music or something like that. It's 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010, 2000. So yeah, seven decades she's been a part of the music business. Recording, singing, writing. I Will Always Love You, Dolly Parton song. She's pretty important based on like just her saturation level in the music business. And, she has some rock in there or rock-like characteristics. I'm thinking of like 9 to 5, which is just a pop song, but at least it's something you can listen to, right? It's not just noise and distortion. Dolly Parton is just a giant of the music industry. So I'm going to say, okay. I mean, I don't love it, but I'm going to say, okay. Next is Rage Against the Machine. No, there are just too many other bands that haven't been put in, and putting them on this list. Look, again, here's my bias. Beck, Rage Against the Machine, it's just not my thing. It's just not, I mean, yeah, Tom Morello. Everybody's gonna say Tom Morello, incredible guitarist, amazing. I heard Ted Nugent say that Rage Against the Machine is raging against nothing. So I'd be more apt to consider them if they were actually raging against the machine and not placating the machine and not jumping on board with the machine. So musically, it's not my thing. And this is a Dave thing. I'm going to say no. Someone else will say, well, at least they're rock and they're good and they've got Tom Morello and they say crazy things and they're diverse. You don't know what they're going to do next. They're not all just raging songs. I'm just going to say no. I just don't. It's just not for me. Lionel Richie shows up on this list. So again, this list has 1 foot in the weird and 1 foot in the normal. And this is the way they like it. And they're probably going to put in all the weird stuff. Lionel Richie, his omission to this, to me, for this long, is an insult to everybody's intelligence. Michael Jackson is in, right? If you're going to give me sodium pentothal, well, you don't even have to. You just say, hey, who do you like better, Lionel or Michael? Lionel Richie, hands down. Brilliant singer, brilliant songwriter. Didn't have to do crazy, weird stuff to get people's attention. Then his work in the Commodores, spectacular. Producer, We Are the World, let's not forget about that. This guy should have been in 25 years ago. Okay, I don't understand why. Maybe he wasn't eligible 25 years ago. Okay, so 15, 20, whenever he was eligible, the first year, okay, he can go toe-to-toe with any songwriter on the planet, and he has written some very memorable radio songs, which are still playing a lot. So good for them for actually nominating him. I hope he gets in. He should get in. It's just ridiculous. And we shall see. Next on the list is Carly Simon. I've done whole videos about Carly Simon. Why isn't Carly Simon in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? They're looking again to put in more women. She's from Martha's Vineyard, so they should all love her. Let's just leave it there. Kind of overshadowed by her ex-husband, James Taylor. So hopefully they're trying to make amends there with that situation. This is probably, to me, and it's just me, and Pat Benatar is a close second, but because Carly has been around since like 1970, 71, and her recordings were winning Grammys or being nominated. I think she won, for one song, she won like an Oscar, a Golden Globe. I mean, there's this one song from a soundtrack from the 80s. It's called Let the River Run, Academy Award winning song. I was totally in love with Carly Simon, especially her comeback in the late 80s, the whole Coming Around Again era. Yeah, I listened to a lot of adult contemporary radio. Sorry, I just did. I grew up on Cape Cod, and in the 1970s and early 80s, I mean, Carly Simon was basically a radio staple, and they couldn't get enough of it. Now, you know, her radio airplay here in the States has been reduced to like You're So Vain. It's so ridiculous. She had so many great songs. She is a great artist. She is visually very attractive, or she was, especially in her heyday. I think she still looks good in her 70s. She was kind of shy and introverted. So it didn't always translate well when she did concerts, but that Live from Martha's Vineyard CD that came out again was just spectacular, production value wise, and she sounded great. And look, she's just such a classy person, and she just elevates the class in the room if she gets the nomination and she wins. So let's hope that she wins, okay? Because she's just fantastic, and she should have been in years ago. A Tribe Called Quest is next on the list. Again, I don't get this. I don't understand it. This is a different form. I know people are going to say, nope, it's a different form. And I've heard the guy explain, one of the guys from the Hall of Fame, probably the guy who is trying to promote this list, this diverse list, much like Eminem. I would say a Tribe Called Quest might actually be a little bit more interesting musically than Eminem. So, okay, but I just don't see how this is, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't get it. Unless we're going to just change definitions, or we're going to say that words don't mean anything. All right. I'm willing to accept Dolly Parton, but just barely. Okay. Because she's had some pop crossover and she's just this mega star of music in general. I don't know if I can accept a Tribe Called Quest. All right. I just can't do it. And we're going to see this every year that they do this. They're just going to keep mixing this up, and I'm going to sit here and go, I don't understand it. So there is a stalemate there. So I'm going to say no to a Tribe Called Quest. Dionne Warwick is last on this list. Yeah, I don't see a reason not to put Dionne Warwick in this list. We've got a lot of male R&B singers that have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Dionne Warwick, I'm pretty sure she's probably in her late 70s, maybe even close to 80. She's been doing this since the late 60s, the mid to late 1960s. She's been recording music. If you're as old as me, you probably remember a song called Do You Know the Way to San Jose? Was on the radio a lot. And again, if you want to class the joint up a bit, I mean, her collaboration with the Spinners, Then Came You. In the early 80s, it was Deja Vu. And That's What Friends Are For. Come on, people. Get on the bus here. Get with the program. I mean, such a wonderful singer, a classy lady. I don't know why she wasn't nominated a long time ago. And again, they're trying to nominate more women, and here's a woman of color. They're gonna satisfy everybody, because they're gonna get the bean counters that are gonna check the boxes and say, yup. And then they're gonna get the mainstream people like me that say, oh, of course. I don't know why we're even talking about what gender or what color or any of this stuff. I don't even know why we're doing that. She's really good, as is Lionel Richie. He's really good. They both should be in. It's kind of dumb that they're not. And so there you have it. That's the list. It's an interesting list. Like I say, it has 1 foot in the weird and 1 foot in the mainstream. We shall see how this all pans out. Obviously, popularity to the Hall of Fame isn't that important. Like Pat Benatar, she's popular, right? Fela Kuti, not so much. But again, I'm a little struggling on the Fela nomination. I think musically that is some really hardcore music. You can't deny the force that is Fela Kuti. But again, there are a lot of forces of nature out there that ought to be considered as well. And that opens up a can of worms. Why this one and not the other one? Is it bean counting? Is it just because we have to have certain groups on the list or certain characteristics of people that we have to, again, check every box for? And this is definitely an interesting list because it does all of those things, but you can't argue with some of the talent on this list. If I were to pick, I forget how many of these people get to actually be inducted, but Pat Benatar, Eurythmics, Judas Priest, Lionel Richie, Carly Simon, Dionne Warwick. Okay, those would be my top picks on this list. You may have your own picks. You may think I'm off. That's fine. I mean, this is a channel for, people who are a little older and lived through some really great music. So it's kind of hard for me to get down and understand why, say, the New York Dolls are on this list, or Beck, or some of the things that I'm really not into. So that's just my perspective. You can disagree, and that's fine. And you're welcome to maybe send me your own list. By the way, if you want to sign up for Patreon. It's only $1 a month, and you can do that pretty easily. There's a little logo at the top of the banner here on the page, and I appreciate that. And for all the new subscribers who are coming on board, I want to thank everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we will see you soon.